Do you ever stop yourself from doing something because you're worried you might not be successful at it? In other words, do you ever let fear of failure get in your way? If so, this episode is for you. I'll share 3 strategies to help you let go of your fear of failure. You're listening to Pure Light, where we explore how to become the highest version of yourself so that you feel worthy of your craziest dreams and confident in your power to make them happen. My name is Ailey. I'm a coach and a Kundalini yoga and meditation teacher. This is episode 51. So a couple of months ago, I was at this event in Toronto. It was an event with Matt Kahn, who I was not familiar with his work prior to this event, but I ended up at this event. And he's an author. He's written, I think, a couple of books, and he's published them, I believe it's through Hay House. And it's interesting because one of the things that he talked about at the event was that he had just recently, like just a couple of days before the event, let go of the idea that publishing those books was not a success because they did not make it onto the New York Times bestseller list. And because he had not been invited to be on Super Soul Sunday with Oprah. And listening to him, I was just like, oh my God, because I wrote a blog post, this was a while ago, about how I was scared that if I wrote a book, it would not end up on the New York Times bestseller list, which is like the craziest fear because on one level, who cares? But on another level, like it's interesting what we can use as definitions of failure and also as blocks to prevent us from doing the work that we feel called to do. Because this is a book that I feel called to do, and I've been working on it, for a while now. And it was just really interesting to hear someone else who, I'm at this event with a couple of hundred people, I think, and hear someone else say that they have the same fear as I do. It was really kind of interesting. And I think the thing with failure is, like, if you let fear of failure get in your way, you'll never win because you usually won't even try. Whether it's the fear of not making the New York Times bestseller list or whether it's some other fear, if you let that thing prevent you from doing the thing that you feel called to do, it's not only going to prevent you from getting potentially the successful result, but it's going to prevent you from becoming the person that you're meant to be because you're not following that calling within you. So it's really important when you notice yourself holding back out of fear of failure to figure out a way to deal with it. So I'm going to share with you 3 strategies to do that. So the first one is to focus on the journey and not the destination. And this is something that I'm sure you've heard before, but when you're focused on the destination or the outcome, you're more likely to evaluate what's happening as a success or a failure because it's about the results more than anything else. So if you have ever been in a car with a kid, or if you've ever been a kid yourself, you've probably seen someone be like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Like, as kids often are, because they're obsessed with getting out of the car and being where the car is going. So they don't want to be in the situation that they're in now. They just want that situation to be over so that they can be at that final destination. And because of that, there's no enjoyment of the car ride because the car ride is just an obstacle to being at that destination. And the car ride is basically like getting in the way of what you or what the kid ultimately wants, which is getting to that destination. And when I was backpacking in Australia a few years ago, I was on this group tour where we did a bunch of hikes in the outback. And it was interesting because I remember some of the people who were on those hikes were always like, they wanted to win. They wanted to be the first one to the summit or to whatever point we were going to. And because of that, they were just focused on getting there. They were not focused on looking at all the stuff around us as we were on that path. And it's interesting because I remember noticing for myself, like I didn't want to be last. I didn't feel the need to necessarily be first, but like there was definitely like a certain level of tolerance that I had for being comfortable with being like towards the end of the pack. And, you know, At one point, I consciously chose to let that go and just walk at whatever speed I wanted to, as opposed to being like, oh, like, I don't want to be last. And it was a much more enjoyable hike because you notice a lot more stuff along the way. Like, I was taking pictures of stuff along the way and really enjoying every moment of it, as opposed to just being like, okay, like, where's the viewpoint that we're getting to, or where's this thing that we're getting to? It's like all that pressure was off, and it was just about enjoying the walk, enjoying the hike. Like, when you're focused on getting to an outcome or getting to a specific place, there's an underlying assumption about the world, and there's an underlying assumption that the world is competitive. So you're either going to win if you get ahead, or you're going to lose if you fall behind. And there's a quote from Albert Einstein, which is, the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. And when you think along the lines of, like, there's a winner and there are losers, the world is a very hostile place. Like, it's not a friendly place. But when you let go of that underlying assumption that we're all in some kind of competition and there are winners and there are losers, it becomes more about the experience. It becomes about the partnership and the collaboration and the support rather than who's first. And then all of a sudden, the universe is a much friendlier place. So all of this to say that focusing on the journey will really help with letting go of that fear of failure. And the second strategy that'll help with letting go of a fear of failure is looking at it as an experiment. So looking at something as an experiment, it gives you permission to fail. And more importantly than that, it gives you permission to try, so that you aren't just kind of stuck in that energy of indecision and that energy of like, like, should I, shouldn't I don't know. And you have the ability to move forward, because you can go through that with that attitude of looking at it as an experiment. And then also a lot of curiosity and compassion and the spirit of adventure. Emerson said, life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. So it isn't the end if you fail. It's probably just like a turning point or a new beginning or a really good lesson. And giving yourself some compassion will help with that permission. And then the third strategy to help you let go of your fear of failure is to ask yourself different questions. Because when you're scared of failure, the question that you're usually asking yourself is something along the lines of like, what if something bad happens? Like, what if something goes wrong? What if I don't win? What if I come in last? Or maybe, what's the worst thing that can happen? And if you notice something about all of those questions, they're all based on the assumption that things will not turn out well. So instead of using that underlying assumption to fuel your thoughts and your actions, ask yourself questions based on the assumption that things will turn out well. So questions like, what's the best possible outcome? What could happen if I do this? What if things went right? So failure isn't something that has to stop you in your tracks. Focusing on the journey, looking at it as an experiment, and focusing on what could go right instead of what could go wrong helps to take the pressure off of failure in a lot of ways. Use those to help you let go of your fear of failure. And if you're still finding excuses are coming up that are, getting in your way, I created a tool for you. It's called Become Your Bravest Self, and you can find it at becomeyourbravestself.com. It's a 20-minute written exercise that'll help you let go of your excuses and do the thing that scares you. And if you want even more support with doing the thing that scares you, book a free discovery call with me to see how we can work together. You can find the link to do that in the show notes for this episode at purelightpodcast.com under episode 51. Or you can find me at aileykutan.com, which is AILIKUUTAN.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, may you be guided by your light.